Welcome to the 11th evening with young researchers at Dokkhuset in Trondheim. The topic tonight is how can diagnosis and treatment be changed to provide a more sustainable health care system. You will meet 4 young and aspiring researchers who will share their knowledge and research on different topics that are of great importance to all of us. After the lectures, there will be an intermission at about 10 minutes and then Q&A. In 2021, NTNU established a strategic research initiative called Sustainability Research at NTNU, where 47 young researchers work in 11 interdisciplinary projects. In addition, 14 researchers in the field of health also came along. All these projects address transformative changes needed to achieve a sustainable society. The population will grow older in the years to come. And if we continue to work the way we have done until now, this may lead to users not having their needs met and to shortage of labor. Many researchers are now looking for more sustainable solutions, both for environmental footprints, for resource scarcity, overtreatment, and more efficient operation of health services. Important questions are: what creates health? What creates ill health? And how can we change from repair to prevention? Strategic research area in health and life science at NTNU has engaged many young researchers to investigate these challenges. Tonight you will meet 4 of them addressing some perspectives in diagnosis and treatment. How to convey knowledge about resistant bacteria. Can gut bacteria show early cancer? How can we help the mentally ill to better physical health? How can new methods in cancer research make it possible to adapt treatment to the individual patient? But first, let me introduce for you Marius Widerøe, the director of NTNU's strategic research area, Health and Life Sciences. They support research, innovation, and dissemination within a wide range of disciplines, and facilitate interdisciplinary collaboration and activities within health and life science research. The aim is to promote better health, quality of life, and sustainable healthcare services. Marius is a qualified doctor, and he has specialized in MR technology and diagnostic imaging. But now the stage is yours, Marius.
So thank you very much. So the topic of today is how can diagnosis and treatment be changed to provide a more sustainable healthcare system, and I've chosen the title The Right Medicine because it really addresses what we need to do. So let's start with the beginning, because sustainability, what is it? And most of you recognize this lady, Gro Harlem Brundtland. She was leading the UN Commission, the Brundtland Commission, back in 1987, and they sort of defined the term sustainability in their report. And they defined it as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So most people think about this in the terms of the environmental effects, the effects on the climate, and so on. But how should we think about sustainability in health or a healthcare setting? So one way of sort of defining that is by saying that sustainable healthcare is about meeting the needs for good health without compromising the environment, our society, or the economic ability for this and future generations. Because what we have today is really an unsustainable healthcare system. Healthcare systems in the Western world is responsible for about 5% of our climate gas emissions. And in addition, they have significant environmental footprint through use of, or the production of medicines, the use of chemicals, the production and use of a lot of medical equipment, travel, etc., and also a vast amount of single-use items. Most of them from plastics. Some of them are really necessary to perform what we do, but some of them are more convenient. The healthcare system also has a significant economic cost. And this graph shows the healthcare spending in the Western world over time. Over the past 25 years, it's steadily been increasing as the percentage of our gross domestic product, which really is how much of our economy we are using. So we are using more and more of our money and our resources on healthcare. And of course, this can't climb into the sky. We have other things we need to spend our resources on. But this cost in terms on the environment, on the climate, and on our purse is driven by several factors. It's driven by an increasing demand for healthcare services. And part of that demand is driven by an aging population. And we know that in Norway, this graph is for Norway, and over the next 25 years, we will have a doubling of the number of people over the age of 80. And those are the people who are most fragile, the ones that use most of our health and care services. So this means that we have an increasing demand from an aging population. And at the same time, we will have reduced access to people working in the healthcare sector because the number of people, young people, will actually decrease, at least relative to this. Another problem is that we are using or overusing a lot of health services. So technology has made it possible to examine and test almost every aspect of our body, whether it is doing scans, MRI scans or ultrasound scans of our entire body, or doing a lot of blood samples or genetic testing and so on and so on. And we're doing also a lot of surgery that is possible. We have a lot of medicines available to correct things. But it has been estimated that at least 20% of all health services that are delivered in the Western world are actually unnecessary or inappropriate, meaning that it doesn't do anything good to the patients. This might be a blood sample, whether the result has nothing to say for the outcome or the choosing of the treatment. It can be a scan with the same, just to make sure. If you have a problem with your knee, you do an MRI and it tells you something you already knew in beforehand. You just get it confirmed. It has nothing to say for the treatment options afterwards. Or a surgery on your shoulder that is actually worse option than doing physiotherapy. And actually, about 10% of the health services we deliver are actually causing harm to the patients. Whether it's an infection you get because of the blood sample you drew, it's very rare, but it happens, or surgery that goes wrong and you are actually hurt, or you take medicines that has side effects that make you ill. So we need to get rid of that in a sustainability aspect. It costs money, it costs resources, and it actually introduces harms and is a patient safety issue. So another major problem facing our health system is antimicrobial resistance to antibiotics. So the past 100 years we have had, almost 100 years, we have had antibiotics. And this has dramatically changed the infectious disease scenario in our world. We have been able to treat a lot of different diseases that people died of before. But this has changed because we have overused antibiotics in the healthcare system, and because we have used antibiotics in other areas, for instance in animal husbandry, producing meat. That has given the microbes the ability to adapt and become resistant. And it has been estimated in a report last year that from now till 2050, in the next 25 years, 39 million people worldwide will die because of infections that we previously were able to treat with antibiotics. So it's a significant problem, but it's not a new problem. We've been dealing with this for decades already, but it's usually been dealt with in silos. But tonight you will hear about a little bit different approach, and a more holistic approach called under the concept of One Health, where we look at the health, the human health, the animal health, and the health of the environment and nature as interacting. We spend about 500 billion kroners every year on healthcare in Norway. And most of that is used on diagnostic and treatment of patients who are ill. And a lot of those diseases are caused by lifestyle factors or environmental factors. So if we could just make people stay healthier longer and prevent them from getting ill, then we could save a lot of resources, a lot of costs. We can save a lot of environmental costs, and we can make people and the society a better place. We know that 4 out of 10 Norwegians will get cancer during their lifetime. And we know that lifestyle and cancer risk are linked. But we don't really know all the links between lifestyle factors and environmental factors, for that case, and cancer, in order to build good preventive strategies. But tonight, you will hear about a project that examines or investigates whether molecules produced by gut bacteria can be one of those missing links. Today, when you have a group of people having the same disorder, having the same illness, they pretty much get the same medicine. And because we are different, we have different genetic backgrounds, we have different biology, and the diseases can apparently look the same, but they are different when you examine them closely. For instance, tumors, they can behave differently in different patients. So when you give the same medicine to everyone, some will get good effects, some will get no effects, and some will get adverse effects, meaning that they get sick or get harmed by the medicine. So if we can use information from the patients, from different tests, blood samples, imaging, tissue samples, or examining the tumor environment, we can try to design medicines or treatments that fit that individual patient and that specific condition. So that's the idea behind personalized medicine, that we give a treatment that are very effective for that individual, with less side effects and less adverse effects. So tonight you will also hear about a project who looks into this. And try to yes, and try to okay, very good. Sorry. And try to see if we can examine the tumor environment and see how you can design treatments to that specific environment. And finally, digitization of health services has been viewed as the holy grail. It's a way to save resources through where digital tools and AI can make healthcare personnel more efficient, aid in prevention and early intervention, reduce the need for travel, and also make treatment and follow-up more available and accessible. And we will hear about a project tonight to investigate how digital tools can help patients with mental disorders carrying out exercise programs as part of the treatment. And the key is whether these digital tools can provide more and better access and use less resources at the same time. So looking forward to hearing about all the projects from our young researchers tonight, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Marius. Lot of challenges to look at here. And now you will meet Anja Noberth. She develops an innovative educational tool in the form of a digital escape room. This is used to communicate the consequences and risks of antimicrobial resistance and importance of One Health. She has a particular focus on young people and targets specifically future prescribers within medicine and veterinary science. Anja is a PhD candidate within neuromedicine and movement science, collaborating with global health and also design departments at NTNU. Please, Anja.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Randi. So good evening, everyone. I want to tell you a little bit about an experience I had when I was a fifth-year medical student. It was the first time I was in the hospital. I was excited. Oh my God, I get to touch patients. But that's where I first met Joseph. Joseph came into the hospital with what seemed to be a simple problem, an open fracture, meaning that the bone had broken through the skin. It was okay though. It was simple, it was uncomplicated. So we do what we would normally do. We cleaned the wound, we set the bone, and we started him on antibiotics to prevent any infection. But just 3 days later, things took a turn. What had started off as a simple infection was starting to show signs of a deep infection. Despite escalating his antibiotics, Joseph continued to deteriorate, and what had started off as a simple infection became a blood infection, which is sepsis. I remember receiving the printout of his results. The bacteria in Joseph's body were resistant to every single antibiotics we had had. Every one. There was no S for susceptible, just resistant, resistant, resistant. I felt my stomach drop. How could this have happened? How could an otherwise healthy young man have his life turned into a death sentence from a simple accident? And now, how do you, as a future doctor, tell your patient that nothing that modern medicine can do will save him? Joseph died that day. He was just 25 years old. Now, Joseph's story is unfortunately not unique. Antimicrobial resistance happens because bacteria are incredibly adaptable. Every time we use antibiotics, we give the bacteria a chance for the bacteria to survive or to evolve. the weak ones normally die off, but the stronger ones, the resistant ones, they multiply, they spread. This makes infections harder to treat and almost impossible. Now, I know you might be thinking, oh, but that was Zambia. But regardless of where in the world this would have happened, the bacteria would have had the chance to have evolved and become resistant. And that is because AMR has no borders. It's fueled by how we all use antibiotics on a global scale. Around the world, AMR is turning treatable infections into deadly ones. And by the year 2050, AMR is going to claim 39 million lives, much more than cancer. Let's put that into perspective. That's equal to the population of Oslo, Drammen, Trondheim, Bergen, and Stavanger, all dying every year for the next 25 years. Now, the bacteria that killed Joseph didn't arise in isolation. They most likely arose in one of these three systems. And that's because AMR is considered a One Health problem. That means that the health of the humans, the animals, and within the environment are all deeply interconnected. And resistant bacteria don't just stay where they're formed. Similar to how they can travel across borders, they also travel across systems, ecosystems specifically. Now, in order to fight AMR, we thought we need to equip our future doctors and our future veterinarians with the right tools. And so, what can we do? How do you teach a topic that is so important to make it memorable, to make it impactful, so that after 6 or 7 years of any education, that they still go, oh, I am responsible for mitigating this. And so that's why we thought we need something innovative. We need something immersive. How can we help students truly understand their role in this fight? And that's why during my PhD, we developed a digital escape room called Armageddon. In this game, students are immersed in realistic clinical scenarios where they must solve puzzles, they must analyze cases, and make critical decisions about antibiotic use that simulates what they would see in normal everyday practice. It encourages them to think critically about what their role is, the effect that their prescribing will have not only on their patients, but also on the global health scale. So we took our game and we piloted it in two very different locations, once in Trondheim, Norway, and once in Lusaka, Zambia. And it was quite exciting. Overall, both our locations had quite positive results. These graphs behind me show the systems, our game's strong usability, their quite engaging design, and the innovative appeal to it, which was quite surprising that in both settings, a high-income country and a low-income country, that these findings were relevant. Then we also did a focus group discussion, and what we found was that students found the game engaging. A student from Trondheim had said, I was looking forward to doing something interactive, and that you can learn while playing a game. Similarly, someone in Zambia had said, it was an engaging method of learning where we're all able to participate. It was interactive, if it's more engaging, more fun, it's easy to learn like that. Another aspect was that the students were highlighting that the One Health approach, which was not really in their curricula, was then influenced by our game. A student had said that global health threats of AMR, how it's transmitted from the human, animal, and the environmental sectors, were highlighted in a way we hadn't considered before. And we've also found our game to be take-home messages in short. So if we can simplify it to make sure that it's poignant and it's impactful, then maybe they have a better chance of remembering it 7 years later. But the critical takeaway is this. If we do not all act now, we risk slipping back into a pre-antibiotic era, and that is a real article. And so even minor infections have the risk of becoming deadly once again. And I know right now our game is focused on our prescribers. But who's to say? Maybe the next game will be for you guys. Thank you for your attention, everyone.
Thank you, Anja. We got something to think about here. The next you will meet is Nicole Quattrini. She aims to detangle the complex dynamics of the gut microbiome and its link with cancer. Specifically, she's looking for unique markers in a large biobank like HUNT in order to determine if and how the gut microbiome can give us a signal of cancer before it develops. Nicole is a PhD candidate in the biostatistics at NTNU. And now the stage is yours.
Thank you, Randy, for the lovely introduction, and welcome everyone. Tonight I'll be talking to you about my PhD project. We're attempting to use the gut microbiome for early cancer detection. I would like to take you on a journey into what it means to be a researcher in this field, and hopefully by the end spark your curiosity a little bit. The gut microbiome is a microscopic ecosystem that lives within your intestine. But don't let the word microscopic fool you, because the gut microbiome is absolutely magical. Think of it as a giant city. Think of the gut lining and the blood vessels as the public transport, the roads, the bridges of this city. Think of services like digestion and immune system support as the essential services of this city. And just like a city is inhabited by many different people of many different backgrounds, the gut microbiome too is inhabited by bacteria, archaea, fungi, and viruses. And these all work together or in symmetry with each other to help maintain balance within this system. And this balance, we refer to it as eubiosis. And when an individual has a gut microbiome that is in a state of eubiosis, it usually is a healthy individual. But there are factors that can push this balance into unbalance. And we refer to this as dysbiosis. And prolonged states of dysbiosis have been linked with different diseases, including cancer. Now, research so far has focused on comparing the gut microbiomes of individuals who have cancer versus those who don't have cancer. But we know that the best way to fight cancer is to prevent it. And we also know that your body starts giving you clues that a change is happening before the change happens. So we thought it would be interesting to see if the gut microbiome can give you these clues. Essentially asking the question, can the gut microbiome give you signals for future cancer development? In which case, what do we need? To sample people's microbiome takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of money. And how do you sample individuals who will develop cancer but don't yet have a diagnosis? The answer, as always, lies in data, and in our case, a lot of data. First, we need a large group of people. Large enough where, while most people won't develop cancer, unfortunately some will. Next, we need to sample their microbiome. And we get this information from their stool. We sample the thousands of DNA fragments of the bacteria that are present in your stool, and that is how we retrieve this information. Next, we need health, more specifically your cancer data. And finally, information on your lifestyle. What do you eat? How much physical activity do you do? And lucky for us here at NTNU, we have access to the HUNT study. For those of you unfamiliar with HUNT, it's a huge study that takes place every 10 years since it started in the 1980s. Maybe some of you have participated. And it collects a wide range of data from medical examination, lifestyle questionnaires, and even biological samples. So thanks to HUNT, we have 13,000 microbiome samples. And of these 13,000 microbiome samples, we know 2,000 have cancer. And we know this thanks to the Norwegian Cancer Registry. Now, the microbiome is a very, very, very popular topic in science. Especially in the last 10 years, it has become increasingly popular to talk about all it can do, essentially unlocking the mysteries of life. And while it is true that understanding the gut microbiome can help us better understand keys to unlocking diseases and mitigating diseases, we also need to be extra careful on how we interpret our results, because false conclusions tend to spread like wildfire. And the most important thing you need to know is that the methods that I use to analyze the data, the statistics that I use, matters. Why? Because depending on the method that I use, I get different results. What I want to do is ask my data the question, which microbes within our gut microbiome increase or decrease your risk of getting cancer? But why does this matter? Why can't I just use normal statistics and call it a day? Well, let me make an analogy using COVID tests. Do you remember when they rolled out those at-home testing kits and we were all shoving sticks up our noses for what felt like an incredibly long time? We quickly had to learn the difference between a false positive and a false negative test. If you had COVID and the test said you didn't, that's a false negative. If you didn't have COVID, but the test said you did, that's a false positive, as opposed to the test being accurate and giving you the true positive and true negative results. And the point is that the same applies for my data. If I ask a question, a statistical question that isn't appropriate for my data, or if I handle the data improperly, I get false positive and false negative results. False negative being that my data is telling me these microbes are absolutely not linked with future cancer, when in reality they might be. And false positive being that my data tells me these microbes absolutely are linked with future cancer, when in reality they might not. And a key aspect of microbiome data is that we are still in the process of developing these statistical tools. And we're doing this to avoid the risk of having false conclusions. So what we aim to do, is use the gut microbiome to find links for future cancer. What we have is the perfect data set to do this. But what we need is the appropriate statistical tools. And this is what I'm working on right now. And we have so far found some bacteria that have been linked or associated with future cancer. But association alone doesn't mean that these bacteria cause the cancer. And that's a very important point. The association alone will not tell us that these bacteria cause the cancer. There can be other factors like your lifestyle, your diet, that affect the bacteria and also affect the cancer. So that's what we're going to be focusing on in the future as well. We plan on zooming into the roles of these bacteria and their interactions with you, the host, to better understand the dynamics and their potential role in future cancer development. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Our next guest is Victoire Bondeville. She is a pharmacist, and she investigates how the environment around cancer makes it more or less aggressive, and how affects the treatment response for the patient. In her research, she uses so-called organoids that create conditions that are more representative for real cancer without the ethical implications following from animal testing. Victoire is a PhD in medical technology at NTNU. Please, take the stage.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Tonight I'll be telling you about how I'm playing Legos in the lab, and I called my presentation Rebuilding Cancer to tear it apart. First of all, I'd like you to meet Ragnhild. Ragnhild is 65. She works here at St. Olav, the hospital. She's a secretary. Probably saw her if you went for an appointment. She has quite a large family, husband, kids, even grandkids now, planning to retire soon. Who knows, maybe Gran Canaria. The problem we have is that Ragnhild has been feeling a bit sick recently, a lot of stomach pain, no appetite, and overall a bit dizzy. Not great. She goes to her forslege, her GP, her doctor, and tells them about it. And the doctor says, probably just a stomach bug, don't worry about it, it's gonna disappear, just wait it out. The problem is that this is how Ragnhild's belly starts to look like. That's not good. She goes back to her GP, nags him, nags him, nags him. 3 months later, she finally gets a scan at St. Olav. This is what you see on the scan. The big gray blobs. You're supposed to see organs. And this is what is happening inside Ragnhild's body. Normally, the tissue would be flat, and here what you see is liquid that is accumulating in her belly because something is making her vessels permeable. Ragnhild has ovarian cancer. It is at stage 3. Which means the cancer has started spreading, and this is why her belly looks like this. And the clock is ticking, because ovarian cancer is often caught at this stage, stage 3, but if it keeps going at stage 4, here you have the survival rates. Stage 3, 41%, stage 4, 20%. Clock is ticking, and we have to do something very quick for her. She has several treatment options. Surgery. The surgeon will remove most of the metastatic tissue, the cancer that has started spreading, and the tumor. Then some chemotherapy, which is a very effective but very aggressive treatment with a lot of side effects, very difficult to handle for the patients. And something that has been gaining a bit of popularity recently was called targeted therapy, which means that instead of being a nuclear bomb, the treatment will focus on one specific target or protein to inhibit the cancer growth and eventually kill it. But she has another option, even newer, which is called personalized therapy. It means that the treatment that Ragnhild would receive is fully adapted to the specificities of her cancers. The surgeon asks her if she would like to be part of a clinical trial that's happening at St. Olav right now about this. It's a difficult choice because she might not necessarily get benefits from that trial, but maybe future patients will. And this is an artistic vision of what I do. I will try to help Ragnhild by rebuilding her cancer in the lab and figuring out which treatment works the best on it. Ragnhild takes a bit of time, but finally she agrees to it. This trial has multiple goals. This is what the oncologist, the doctor, is interested in. He wants to know which treatment he has to give to Ragnhild to make sure the cancer gets away and does not come back. And this is why I, as a researcher, I'm interested in. I want to understand what's happening around the tumor. How can it become so invasive? How can it spread that fast and cause that many damages? So that's a lot of dual goals. And it's a win-win for the surgeon and for me. So probably a lot of you already had dinner or are gonna get dinner. So I made some time-friendly pictures, not including stuff. Contact me if you want the pictures that are not friendly. During the surgery, the tumor is removed, and here I come at Kvinnebarn, the Center for Gynecological Medicine, when they call me, hey, come pick up the samples. I get the samples, and then I run back to my lab. And using some enzymes, I can break apart the tumor and reconstitute it again, exactly like a Lego, in some plates in the lab. And then I can grow that cancer and then try out which medication might work or not. These 3D tumors are called organoids, or tumors in a petri dish. Over time, they grow more and more cancer cells because the original tumor has cancer cells, but it also has a lot of other cells like immune cells, support cells. But what I want to know is which treatment works on cancer. Each gray blob you have here is an organoid, is a tumor in a petri dish. I do a lot of imaging to track how this is growing, and I can also do something called immunofluorescence imaging that you see with the very nice colors here. And I have a lot of markers to tell me what is cancer and what is not, which are here in the different colors. Here is it a bigger zoom. I think it's a very pretty picture. I really like it. And here you have the skeleton of the cells and some other markers to tell me in purple and in red, this is cancer. So now that I know for sure that what I have are cancer cells, I can do a drug screening. So this is a bit technical, but I will take these organoids and using a robot, test a lot and a lot, hundreds sometimes, of medications, of drugs on them, and then see which medication make them die faster and also, impact the method that they die. And then I can report to the surgeon, this and this medication works, this one, maybe leave it apart for now. This is an example of how I would report. At the top you have carboplatin, which is a chemotherapy, so very aggressive treatment, but very difficult for the patient. You can see that it's a treatment that the tumor is sensitive to. Quite sensitive, medium sensitivity, and the invasion of the tumor is halted. This is very important, because if the tumor keeps spreading, then we cannot do surgery anymore. It's palliative treatment. But here, you see that medication, olaparib, which is a new medication, and the tumor is sensitive, very sensitive to this treatment, and the invasion is halted. And lucky for us, this treatment is less aggressive than carboplatin. So I can tell the surgeon, okay, give it a try maybe. And based on my research, this treatment is the best for the patient. Ragnhild has got the best treatment as fast as possible, and she fought very bravely. So now she's in remission. That's great news. But the problem is that her journey is not finished. Getting cancer took a huge toll on her mental health, and she would need psychological help. She would need a lot of follow-up by the doctors to make sure the cancer is not coming back. And she was 65. She was so close to retirement, but probably she's never going to come back to work. So social security also have to play a part here, as well as the other healthcare practitioners, such as nurses and physical therapists, that will help her in her recovery process. Although I talked here about ovarian cancer, this is a method that can be applied to other types of cancer. And I would like you here, and Ragnhild also would like you, to meet Sven. This is one of her husband's friends. He's 72, already retired, good for him. But he just got diagnosed with prostate cancer. And since Ragnhild's trial has been really successful, we can hope to help Sven as well and make those organoids. This is the next step of our adventure here. Yeah, I'd like to thank you for being here.
Thank you, Victoire. We proceed and will now welcome Torgeir Ektvedt Fredriksen, who investigates how digital tools can help patients with mental health disorders. perform high-intensity exercise on their own and improve their physical health. The project also compares the physical health in the patient group with a reference group without mental health disorders. And Torgeir is PhD candidate in the mental health department at NTNU. So please, stage is yours.
Thank you, Randi. Thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you all for coming and still being here for the last presentation. I'm going to talk about my project, which isn't finished, but I still active. It's recruiting patients. It's about measurement of physical health after a digital follow-up of high-intensity training in people with mental disorders. What do we know about this physical health of this group of people with a mental disorder? We know that activity level is reduced, which leads to a reduced heart function, physical health, and which increase the amount of appointments or visit that you have at the hospitals, which increase the pressure on the healthcare systems and also the healthcare workers. This means that if you are a person with a mental disorder which is 40 years old, woman or man, the biological age is often around 60 to 70. And we know this because we measure it directly with what is called oxygen uptake, which that you put on a mask on a treadmill and you test how much oxygen that you breathe in, that you can supply to your body and organs. And it is the heart function, the pumping capacity, which supply the oxygen to your body. So the big question is, can we resolve this issue with exercise? Can we improve the biological age with exercise? And yes, we can. You can improve oxygen uptake and heart function if you do high-intensity training for 60 minutes each time you are physically active. This is just a cube which illustrates that if you do high-intensity training, you will improve both heart function and oxygen uptake. You can do it by having 4x4 interval training. Maybe some of you have heard it, maybe some of you are scared of it, or maybe some of you hate it. But it's really effective, and if you do it 2 times per week for 3 months, the biological age is reduced to 20, 30 years. And we know this because we do this every single day at training clinics here in Trondheim, and we measure it. And it's been documented for 20 to 30 years now. So this is pretty solid treatment. This is just an example how the interval training should look. This is me, just some humble bragging. And it's this area here, where you can see it, where the intensity is really high. You have these stints or interval. We use 4x4 because it's easy to remember, and it gives you enough time in the high intensity, because you can't be there for a long time. You just need to be there for maybe 1 to 2 minutes per interval. Then you improve the heart function. You need to be at high intensity in order to improve the heart. Yeah, a happy heart. So the big question is, the main question for my PhD project is that if you can make this treatment digital and more sustainable, so we can reach out to more patients who are not able to come to the clinic, for example, and don't want to come to the clinic, and we can provide more treatment and do not have to have more pressure on the healthcare workers. We can do it because the digital healthcare solutions are increasing. Maybe some of here are experienced Helsami, especially here in Trøndelag. You have Helsami, you get notification, you get information after an appointment at the doctor. Yeah, here it is. Some of you may be familiarized with it. I am. So how can people perform high-intensity exercise on their own? That's the second question. We can use HealthSummy for a notification. You send a notification to a patient that you need to do your high-intensity training, and you use an exercise app, which is developed by NTNU. It guides you how you can do high-intensity interval, 4x4 interval training. And it's been really, really solid, because if I give you an example of how the exercise app looks, it starts with this picture here, where you just press start. It's 4x4 interval. You press start. You can do it indoor on a treadmill or a bicycle, or you can do it outside. It depends on what you like or prefer. And then it counts down for what you are doing. You have 4 minutes, counts down, and then have an active break of 3 minutes. And afterwards, you put in, for example, how fast you have run on the treadmill. But if you do it outside, you have a GPS that follows you how fast you can run. Yeah. And at the end, everyone can see, you get this fitness evaluation, the physical health fitness. This is me, some more humble bragging. Biological age of 20. Yeah. But the patient group, if you have that in my age, we often see that they are here, around here, biological age of 50. And that can be reduced with this type of treatment, high-intensity training, 2 to 3 times per week for 3 months. So this is kind of how my project is looks like. We test the patients. Often always goes really well, because your capacity is your capacity, your oxygen uptake, your heart function, and you increase the incline or the pace until they are not able to perform anymore. And then we stop the treadmill. And then we see how much oxygen your heart can provide through your body. And then they get follow-up. We have one group that are not getting the follow-up. You have one group that are getting the follow-up. So you know that if the follow-up treatment works, we know that is the actual follow-up that gives the improvement of the heart and physical health. So that's why we have like control group who are not getting the follow-up. And then we test them again. Yeah. I think I'm finished. Yeah.
Thank you, Torgeir, and thank you to all our PhD candidates and Marius. Now there will be about a 10 minutes break, and then you will be back here, and we will be seated with the candidates here, and then we are ready to take questions from you. And I have also some questions. So please enjoy, and the bar is in the entrance. We welcome to our future scientist. You are a scientist already. I will start by giving each of you a specific question, and then after that we invite the audience. So can you think about what they have told you? Anja, you're sitting next to me, so you can start. What are the challenges of reaching all future doctors and veterinarians with this knowledge you told about with multi-resistant bacteria?
Is this on? Yes, it is. Okay. That's a good question. So I think the problem is that antimicrobial resistance is quite a big subject, and it's quite a complex topic. And so the first challenge that I think we need to think about is how do we actually communicate towards the medical, the veterinarians, and the auxiliary hospital staff members, as well as the environmental and the veterinarian sectors. So the first challenge is highlighting that this isn't an approach that can be approached in a silo. It needs to be approached from a holistic perspective. And then the second challenge is how do you actually communicate that games are worth investing in? You know, because I think over the past couple of years or forever, we're challenging the status quo where we're saying, hey, in adjunct to the lectures, why don't we also have a game? And so there's a battle with that as well. So it's both this multidisciplinary aspect and then in addition to a new novel way of being taught. I think that answers your
this
question.
is about then the mental way of thinking concerning, since this involves the three dimensions of environmental. But what about costs? Money, is it a huge, needed a huge financing side for doing this?
For now, what we have done was develop a prototype, and one of the reasons we have developed or piloted this game both in a high-income country and a low-income country was to establish, what are the resources needed. And again, we acknowledge that there are systems in place that make it difficult to introduce a new novel tool. And one of the things is, can we develop an intervention that can be addressed regardless of socioeconomic status? So everyone almost has a phone, everyone has internet. Definitely there are challenges, and we've seen it in our analyses where we look at what are the challenges in making it applicable. So in Zambia, for example, we have something called load shedding, and that's where you have no electricity for a period of time. And when you have that, then there's no internet as well. So that is a big challenge there. So it's not necessarily the monetary things, it's the resources available. But in order for us to have something that can be developed and used in a high-income country and a low-income country, we thought, well, a digital option is probably better than a physical escape room, because that was another opportunity to create. But for now, it's limited to what are the resources and making use of the resources that are already available in different contexts.
But for the practicing doctors and the future doctors, why is it so difficult to have them to get patients taking the medicine according to the prescription?
So I think that's a little bit of a difficult question to answer, because it's got to do with how patients are being taught. And so I think in medical school, in veterinarian school, okay, I'm not a vet, but what I'm assuming is that the people are the ones giving the antibiotics to their pets. But one thing that we're seeing is that doctors and veterinarians are responsible for prescribing these antibiotics. And if they don't know what the right dosage is, what the right microorganism is, then that problem will continually be fueled. And so it's more of, how do you communicate, again, the role of the prescriber, and how can they understand the importance so that they can then communicate it to their patients? And so when you're at the doctor and they tell you, just take antibiotics, and they say 3 times a day, are you taking it breakfast, lunch, supper, or are you taking it every 8 hours? So there's a difference in nuance, because someone can break up, have breakfast at 8 o'clock, and then have their first lunch at 10 o'clock, and then their dinner at 4 p.m., and that's when they take their antibiotics, but that's not correct. And so it's, how do you, as a prescriber, communicate the correct duration and dosage and time of taking the antibiotics, for example.
Thank you, Anja. You know a lot about this. Yeah, great. Nicole, you are also working at the human body, but from different perspectives. I guess there are a lot of challenges in your field. But what has been the biggest challenge when approaching a microbiome analysis? There are billions of the microbes in this
Yeah,
areas.
there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I think so far, and I touched upon it in my presentation, is that there's a lot of information out there on different ways, different methods, and different methods, as I said, do different things. And there appears to be a somewhat of a limit of understanding to what these methods actually do and what is appropriate to use and what isn't. So there is a lot of noise out there. And not just in popular science, but also in scientific literature. And so far, my biggest challenge has been sieving through the noise to find the information that can actually help ground my results in statistically, let's say. Yeah.
Mm. Do you think, what is the time frame for reaching the goal of identifying something that can be helping for the finding cancer? Is it 1 year, 5 years, 10 years?
You mean once we identify bacteria,
Yeah,
how we can
to find if because by now you are not sure that you will find some markers in the biome in the intestine. You think you are quite sure that you will find that?
Well, you're going to have to wait to see my published articles for that.
Exactly. You expect to find that.
Well, I will cite to you my co-supervisor Matteo, who likes to say I am agnostic. I choose to wait to see what the data tells me. If there is, that's great. If there isn't, that's great. We'll find other ways to find ways to help people get understand their bodies better and understand their potential risk for cancer better as well.
Thank you. Victoire, we are then in really another part of the medicine. What is the most important challenge in your future work to succeed with this form of treatment on a larger scale?
The challenge is also the proof of concept of the fact that what I am doing is a good idea. Some days I wonder, but in the end it is. And it is that the main idea is that each patient's environment is different, and that's why the treatments don't work the same. And the problem I have is that in culture, each samples are different and the treatments don't work the same. So it's very difficult to make generalizations. But that also means that we find more and more interesting behaviors of those cells. They will start invading in ways we haven't planned, and they will start communicating with each other. And it's very, very mind-blowing to see how they adapt, to those changes of environment. But the main challenge is the variability.
Thank you. Torgeir, mental disorders. Why are people with a mental disorder much more inactive than other people?
Yeah, it seems like it's the mental disorder that makes it challenging to be physically active. We have some data that where we established that they want to be physically active, they are motivated for it, but they need some supervision and some guidance and some appointment to be physically active. So it seems that it's the mental disorders which makes it difficult for them to be physically active, but they want to, which is kind of interesting. So that's why it's really important to do some more research on how we can provide more treatment with exercise.
But isn't this valid for all the others of us? I think I can recognize myself in what you describe. And until now, I don't have a diagnostic side any mental disease. So what? Is it even worse for them, or harder, even steeper curves to walk for doing it?
Yeah, it seems like it's like then you are not active at all, for a long time. Then maybe suddenly you are a little bit active, but the people the reference group with who has not a mental disorder, they are like some activity all the time. Yeah, we are talking about just going to kind of the store, and you don't want to do that because it's making you exhausting. Yeah.
And yeah, there are probably many sides of this we'll discuss further. Thank you. Marius, now you have heard 4 of your 14 candidates. What is your impression? What do you think?
So I'm immensely impressed by their performance tonight. I think they deserve a pause.
Yeah.
And I think there are 2 things. So one is it shows the importance of being able to communicate the project you're doing, the research you're doing. And I think they showed great example of doing that today, making it publicly available for everyone to understand what they're doing. And I think that is important for our mission as researchers, to be able to communicate that, because they are going to write a thesis in a few years. And that is probably going to be read by a handful of people in the world, sorry to say, but it's technically advanced. It's for the experts. But in there lies wisdom, in there lies results that should be available to everyone. And that is why it's important to be able to communicate that. And I think that is something we need to train them on, like they have been done over the past 3 months. It's a skill that needs to be practiced and developed.
Yeah, and all these perspectives we now heard about, these are, I guess, all of us listening to them. We, in one or the other phase, part of our life, we will come in contact with what you now just told us about. So this is concerning all and everyone, or am I very wrong? No? Yeah. And some of we have already been close to, for example, cancer. That's so common. But now I can't see you here because, or I see just a few of you because of the lights. It's so heavy. Now we're inviting the audience here to give us questions. Here's a hand first, I can see. Yeah. Nina will come with a microphone and give a short and clear question for us.
Yeah. Hello. First of all of you did really good job today. My question is directed towards Alia. That you explained very well that how the different ecosystems are so interconnected. This whole nexus of environment, human and animals. And then you talk about your app that seems to be a success in training doctors or medical practitioners to be aware of what AMR is and how to work toward it. My question is, how do you emulate this interactive, let's say, app? What data do you use, and how this data fits into the picture of training the doctors or practitioners? Yeah.
No, thank you. That's a nice question. So our app at the moment, our prototype, is based on a couple of levels, and we've piloted it amongst medical students in Norway and in Zambia, and then the veterinarian students in Norway. And so what we have done is our app has 3 or 2 levels. The first level is the background. And the background level is based on all the literature about what AMR is, how it happens, why it's important, and this importance of this One Health interconnectedness, or this One Health approach. And so all of that is based on pre-existing literature. And then the levels are, or level 1 and level 2 are clinical case scenarios. And with that, we've worked together with clinical microbiologists, infectious disease doctors, veterinarians, doctors, education, pedagogy kind of people. And we've gotten all of their inputs about, what is a case that is simple, but also important that you will most likely see in your everyday practice. And so, for example, our clinical case in the medical scenario is a urinary tract infection. And how do then you go about treating? So it's a simulation of you have a patient, you interact with the patient, you get the results, you see the results, you interpret. And so it's not just simple recall. So we're not just like, oh yes, let me go back 2 rooms and then analyze. It's, okay, so this is how it happens, but now I have to apply that knowledge. And through that, they kind of progress through the rooms based on what knowledge they need to build up on. And then they have to escape the room. And from that, then they learn the clinical core competencies that is from the World Health Organization, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and the veterinarian aspect of that as well. So we're using both, we're really trying to take into consideration this multidisciplinary aspect. I mean, it's really ignorant in a way to say, yes, I by myself, I'm going to do everything and create this case scenario. But we're also trying to, at the same time, encourage other participants to really understand why we need a veterinarian to come and talk about human healthcare, and why then humans need to be interested in what kind of plants they eat, and so on and so forth. So that's the approach that we've taken. And the veterinarian case, for example, is an ear infection in a dog. Which I don't know if you have dogs, but sometimes that's kind of a recurrent thing that they have. Yeah, I hope that answers. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, thank you. That was a good lesson. More hands?
Yes,
Oh,
thank
yeah,
you for
then you
very
will-
inspiring presentations.
You will be next here, another person too. Please go on.
Yeah, I was trying to reflect on my own relationship with the exercise when I listened to you, Torge, and there's always the issue of relapse. So the question I have basically is something that we all struggle with: how to endure sort of what is not necessarily experienced as a positive state of training when you would need to be reaching this high level of intensity. It's sort of kind of unpleasant. So you need to find something that keeps you going even without having a mental disorder. So how do you address this issue of relapse? So you can demonstrate for yourself, okay, I did it once during 3 months, but then the 4th month come and you feel great about yourself, and suddenly you're back in your old bad habits.
Yeah, I think I got your question right, but you can say if I heard wrong. But it is some of the issue that we are addressing, because we know that 3 months of this high-intensity training works, and then it's kind of difficult to kind of increase or get some more beneficial outcome of the exercise. You see that you have this really high improvement for 3 months, and then it kind of stabilizes. So it needs to be kind of a habit, but it's difficult to fall in love with that kind of habit. So that's a really good question. It's really difficult, because maybe the question should be, what should you do? What kind of exercise should you do after that for a period of time, for example, in order to get the motivation back for a new 3 months period? Because if you train for 3 months and you don't kind of do that type of interval training for 1 month, you don't lose the 3 months of improvement that you already have gotten. So that's some of the things we are addressing, and we're also going to follow up patients after 3 months. And then we're going to follow up them after 1 year and talk to them and see how their activity level had been. But it's difficult, yeah.
Marius, is that a new research project?
Yes, it could be, yeah. No, and I think doesn't only address or relate to physical activity. I think it relates to a lot of habits and lifestyle aspects that, well, the bad things feels more comfortable than the good thing. Yeah, so I was actually thinking, about your project. Could we do gamification in some way here, make it more attractive, addictive to do the health promoting things? I don't know.
You have seen gamification by bicycling, to be on a bicycle connected into some gaming. The more you bicycle, the faster you can move through the gaming.
Yeah. So there has been a few research projects on that, to my knowledge, and but I still think we need to like crack the big nut here, because it's a really challenge in our world today.
We had a person or a hand here. Yeah, you are.
Så hvem var det som Randi snakket om?
I don't know. You have to raise your hands once more. Yeah, please.
Really, all presentations were really engaging, and I enjoyed listening to them a lot. My question is for Anja. You mentioned this One Health approach, where you look at the environmental sector, at the animal sector, and also, of course, humans. And I'm wondering, why is that so important in the case of antimicrobial resistance?
Yes, that's also a nice question. So we talk a little bit about how antibiotics affect these different microbes, but then these microbes are within each of these sectors independently. And so in the past, we've just been approaching them in silos, right? We're like, okay, a veterinarian will prescribe antibiotics for their dog, and then full stop. And then the doctor will prescribe antibiotics for the human, full stop. But what they don't look at is how are antibiotics used in these other sectors. So we know, for example, in animal husbandry, so that's like growth promotion, they give antibiotics in the feed of the animals. And that's just because they want bigger, beefier cows. And they do the same for pigs and chickens, and they just give it as preventative. And we've seen it in a couple of news articles last year in Norway, where they've had to recall a lot of meat because antibiotics were prescribed, they were given, and then the animals were killed early. And so that's one aspect, that like the animal or the environmental sector both gets antibiotics, and then we as humans will eat them, and then we get some sort of resistant antibiotic, or we further progress the antimicrobial resistance within our own bodies. And so all of these things are working they're very interconnected. And it's the same, for example, there was a paper that came out last year that was quite frightening. And again, I don't know how many people own dogs, but they were talking about how 2 in every 10 household owners with dogs, they're the ones that get urinary tract infections from their dog. And so that's quite a scary thing, because you're like, okay, well, if I've got a urinary tract infection, I'm going to the doctor, I'm getting the antibiotics, but my dog isn't, then I'm just going to go back and get the same infection from the dog, because it's the same microorganism. But now that microbe has got resistance to the antibiotics that you've taken. And so it's this close link that we're not necessarily looking at. And it's the same with plants, where we use antibiotics in the soil for the feed. We use it for prevention. And it's, again, antimicrobial resistance is not only about bacteria, it's also about fungus, viruses, and parasites. So, you're taking something to prevent fungal resistance, but for plants, but that's something that will get back in your own system. So approaching it and understanding how the human affects the animal, how the animal affects the humans, and it's all interconnected. And it's a new approach, I think, now that we're considering, which has previously been, we don't need to think about animals, but we do. Yeah.
There was a hand here. Yeah, and here. Okay, first then, and then here. Yeah.
Thank you very much for very inspiring talks. I think it was marvelous. I'm an oncologist, and I have some questions, but at first I thought that you two could collaborate. You should collaborate because everybody should collaborate actually. But you two have this antibiotic and microbiome is closely interconnected. And for example, if you get immunotherapy for cancer and you take antibiotic, the immunotherapy doesn't work so well, for example, because it kills something that helps your immune system. So that takes me over to you, Nicole. So you say that you are trying to find some markers for cancer. Is it some special types of cancer? Is it cancer in general? I mean, there are so many different factors that makes cancer develop, like, for example, smoke-related cancers or inactivity or your nutrition-related cancers. Do they all have the same microbiome profile? Are you going to look at those different profiles? That's one question, and then I have a question for you. Yeah, François. Victoire, yes. When you do the screen with your small tumors, okay, your small tumors don't only have tumor cells, okay, so they have many different. So how do you know which cells are affected by the treatment you give, and how do you know that this will actually work in your patients? And that's one, and the other one is when you grow the tumors, are they from the first biopsy or are they from the metastasis? Because the tumor changes as it evolves, it changes, and maybe if you test the primary tumor, it will not work, your treatment will not work in the metastasis. Okay.
Okay, that was 3 questions. Yeah, are you pointing to Nicole first?
Yeah, I'll start. My answer
and you
is
take the
brief.
2 others afterwards. Question 1.
That was a lovely question, and you're absolutely right. There are a lot of factors that influence cancer, and we do our best with our models to account for them as much as we can. Now, that being said, to answer the first part of your question, yes, we look first at cancer as a whole, just to see if there is a general trend that can be seen. And then, of course, we break it down into individual cancer types to see how that changes, because, of course, breast cancer is very different from prostate cancer, which is different from colorectal cancer. There are sex differences also that come into play, and age is a big important factor, and as you said, diet is an important factor, and we try to analyze these variables as best we can and include them in our model as best we can to get a picture that is more or less complete. But you'll have to come back in a year or so when we work on our articles a little bit better to give you a full answer on what we see exactly. Yeah, that's it for me, actually.
Then I can, is it work? Yeah. Then I can keep going. So your first question was about how do I know I'm actually treating cancer cells, right? So I showed a couple images of stainings of markers that will tell me that those cells that are positive to these markers are cancer cells, but you're absolutely right. And in my small tumors, as well as in the patient, a cancer is not only those aggressive cancer cells per se, it's a whole support system. As Nicole mentioned in her image, it's a city. It's a city that has its way of communication, transports and whatnot. The way I know that I'm actually treating cancer cells is that once I get the tumor from the surgeons, I will grow it in a specific cocktail of components, chemicals, inhibitors of certain pathways that those other cells use So I make sure that over time, the only cells that are able to grow and survive are those cancer cells. Secondly, I forgot. Oh, yeah. Thank you. So, first, we're starting on the ovarian cancer, and the ovarian cancer is detected very late, and the metastases are on the connective tissues of the abdomen, on the omentum and the peritoneum. So these are the tissues, the samples we get from ovarian cancer are metastases on these tissues. It is actually surprisingly rare to have ovarian cancerous tissue per se from ovarian cancer. And that also means these tumors are exceptionally aggressive, and yeah, that's one thing. So the line between primary tumor and metastasis in ovarian cancer is kind of blurry, but we're also working on prostate cancer, and in prostate cancer, then it's a lot more clear to have a picture. On a quick side note, we have patients in our ovarian cohort that we have sampled from the surgery, the primary surgery, and some of them have unfortunately relapsed, but that means we have samples from a relapse. And we can expect that these two will have very different profiles. On the prostate side, the primary tumor will be in the prostate, and the metastasis, for instance, can be on the bones. So here it's more of a logistic question that I am not good enough at communication to convince someone to get a drill to their bone just because I'm curious. So that's the main issue we have right now. If we would want to take metastasis tissue, for instance, for the prostate, is that it's very tricky to get. The primary tissue is a lot easier to get.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question.
That
That was great.
So we have a question in hand here. Yeah, please.
Thanks to all of you for great presentations. I also had a question to you, Victoire. I'm also a doctor who has been working in oncology, and I'm interested in this clinical study. Generally speaking, when we have a clinical study, the control group at least should not get anything less than the best treatment such as we know it today, unless it's a very early study where you have a very bad illness which is untreatable. Excuse me. Do I understand you right that in this study, your patients who are involved in the study, they get that specific treatment that you have analyzed in your organoids and not anything else? Or do they get it in addition to the general best known treatment as of today? Because this is an ethical question, and I'm sure you've been working through the ethical committees to get it approved of. But after all, ovarian cancer is not 100% deadly at the stage like your patient had. And so the prognosis has improved a lot with several of the medications that you showed us. So if your patients don't get that treatment and they only get what you have decided in your laboratory is best, is that best for the patient or isn't it? And after all, these organoids, they are not a person. They are a group of cells where you have isolated mostly cancer cells. But after all, in the body, there are lots of cells and lots of connections. You don't get the neurons, you don't get the immune system probably. There is the communication from your brain and from everywhere. So the environment that your cells are in is not the same as in the body. So it's quite risky, but I'm impressed. I mean, I know there have been studies like this going on for a while, trying to isolate cells, cancer cells, and try out their resistance or the sensitivity the same way you do on bacteria. But the human body is a lot more complicated, so you've got quite a challenge.
I do. Thank you. I'm very happy to have oncologists and gynecologists because it's very, very valuable feedback on the other side of the mirror, if I can say. You're completely right on the fact that, yes, this is a tumor, this is not a human body. And this has been a question that has been mainly tackled through very interdisciplinary work, a lot of engineering. I don't know if you heard of organs on a chip. To make it very clear and fast, it's what I do. Those clumps, tumors, 3D structures, and they will be used from different tissues. So for instance, I can have them from the cancer, and if I want to see, oh, but actually, if I want to give this medication and it goes through the gut system, is it gonna reach the tumor? Then I do these clumps of gut system right above, and then I link them. It's a whole hydraulic engineering system. And these, it's a bit nerdy, but these are a lot more representative, and our pretty much only other option is animal testing. And this is also, in the context of sustainability, a big, big issue, because in addition to the ethical aspect, it's so much waste, it's so much, resources that are used for studies that might not necessarily need them. So I'm kind of at an in-between point. And the step under is what is called cell lines. So cancer cells that have been immortalized for sometimes 40, 50 years, and that we cannot really say they're representative of patients nowadays. For the ethical aspects of the trial, this is also a very good question. And of course, as you said, this is not a trial when we're gonna give placebo, because we're going to jail. So that's not good. So they will get the standard pipeline of treatment that is given at St. Olav. I don't know if you work at St. Olav? Oh, wow, yeah. Then maybe you know Guro Aunes. Guro Aunes. She's the surgeon we work with on this trial. And it has been very good to have some clinical input on this. This issue you mentioned, one way we have started thinking about it is with another PhD project, which is a more computer project that is designing a model, AI model that is being trained to predict these most efficient, which would be the most efficient treatment, again, but with a whole larger data set and a lot of different predictions. For instance, I base my predictions on the tissue we get, but he would base it on, for instance, the BRCA status, which is a common marker of some kind of aggressiveness, to make it very simple. So that's one way of dealing with it. I hope I answered somehow a bit your questions.
Inger. We have to have the microphone because the people in stream won't hear that. Oh.
No, I just wondered that one question about if your patients in the treatment group who get your designed medication, if they also get some other medication, or do they only get that one that you have found to be sensitive in the laboratory?
Right now, we're at the preclinical stage because, as you mentioned, these studies have, this field is very very innovative, which means we are discovering new things every day, and it needs a lot of validation. It's maybe 5 years that this field has been going on. So we're at the preclinical stage. I tried explaining how what I do and what I discover in the lab would be helpful for the patients that we get at St. Olaf. Yeah. I would need the surgeon to answer very precisely.
Okay, this was a very deep in the medical treatment. But what we can, we who are not specialists, what rises up here is a lot of dilemmas. It's dilemmas between how to give the aim you, Marius, put up to give the best treatment, the most sustainable treatment. We have a lot of gains, and I think that what we hear now, there's a lot of, especially maybe in the, actually in all the fields that you are working, because for the mentally ill, there is also a dilemma. How much can we expect from them? How much responsibility are they to take for their own health? Are they able to take that responsibility? And we can ask ourselves as well, as some pointed to. And Marius, I would like you to comment on this, because you gave us the overall picture, and for all of us who are the audience, we are, of course, also very concerned when we go to the GP or the fastlege, and we meet the specialist, not to talk about if we are hospitalized and we are having the treatment with cancer. Because the capital we have, which is the most crucial, it is the trust. Do we trust the medicine system that is really, or if it's experimental treatment, and the trust, there's a sort of a psychological contract here between the citizens in the society and what society can offer. A lot of dilemmas. How can you are a researcher now, and you are leading this huge strategic research field. How will you navigate in this landscape?
Ooh, that's a big question. So first of all, I mean, I think the essence of sustainability in healthcare is all about dilemmas. And it's probably why we are moving in the wrong direction and has been for many, many years. It's because we constantly want to give the best treatment. As doctors, we constantly want the best for our patients. And the public expects no less. That's sort of the contract between us. In a way, we, in the healthcare system, we manage a lot of resources on behalf of the society. And we're supposed to manage those resources to the best of the society. But this is quite difficult to sort of safeguard and do when you meet an individual patient. And I think that's sort of one of the dilemmas that a lot of doctors are facing every day. And a lot of these, and a lot of the forces behind driving, for instance, overuse in our healthcare system. We want the best for our patients. The patients expect the best, and I think when, for instance, in a general practitioner's office, a fastlegekontor, when you are squeezed on time, for instance, you don't necessarily are able to communicate that this is not necessary. If you don't have the trust of the patient, prescribing antibiotics, if you say take it 3 times a day for a week, if the patient doesn't have the trust in you, then they don't necessarily follow your prescription. So having that trust is really important in doing what we do. And I think to some extent this trust relationship between doctors and patients, the healthcare system as a whole and the patients, is on the verge of not probably breaking down, but it's diminishing a little bit. And I think some of what we see in the media and in the public, that we have long waiting lists, people experience not getting the health care they need, and so on, is also driving this trust level down, because it's sort of we are not then managing the resources correctly on behalf of the society. And this is sort of a wicked spiral as well, because if people don't trust us, we can't give the correct advice, they don't follow our advice, they may be demanding more services than they really need, and it's really hard to resist. And then, I mean, the queues get longer because people are doing unnecessary examinations and so on, and they get harmed, and then that's additional examinations and so on. But so I think we need to sort of break this spiral in a way, and that's a tough dilemma, and it's probably for the politicians.
But what, what can be needed measures for being able to start that process or something? Where to start? What can be the? Is there any simple measure to take to start?
I don't really think it's any simple way to any solutions, but I think we need to, as a society, move to more a stronger focus on prevention. That's definitely something we do, and I know they have been talking about it, the politicians, for 30 years or something, that we need to do this, but it's really not been followed up. And I think part of it's also why it's not working is because it's been on an individual level. So you need to get yourself together, you need to exercise more, you need to eat more healthy. And we all know that's really hard. And when all other forces in our society is working in the wrong direction, in the other direction, we are driving more cars instead of walking. We have elevators, we have escalators instead of just stairs. Just these simple things about our society, like, and the food that we get, the cheap food is not necessarily healthy food, and so on and so on. So at some level we need to, this needs also to be moved up to a high priority on the national level, and we need to
the system
it's a systemic
level.
Yeah.
Audience, I'm sure that a lot of people here are, Nina, where are you? Ja, og her det en foran her. Ja, start there. Yeah.
Okay. My question is for Nicole. I'm not in the medical field, so my question is more practical. If it turns out that your test is 100% effective in determining if someone is going to have cancer, how often does the gut biome change? How often would you have to take this test to know that you don't have cancer, or that to determine if you will have cancer?
That's a very good question. The point of my research in its application in the field isn't so that we can then shotgun sequence everybody's gut microbiome, because that would be very unsustainable indeed. It's more in under the optics of, say we find one bacterium. In an ideal world, we will find one bacterium that we can link absolutely, without a question of a doubt, to cancer. And what we can then do is do cell cultures and see if a patient or an individual has that bacteria alone, or how much of it. And in that case, then we can better monitor the situation, which wouldn't require having a whole microbiome vision of everything that's going on in their little city. I hope that answers the question.
Ok, da har vi ett der, og så har vi en her til slutt. Ja.
Well, I will be short because I don't actually have a question, because that was partly answered by Marius's comments. But I have a comment to you. It has been a wonderful experience sitting here tonight, listening to you before the break, thinking that I understand, because you were able to present it in such a way that even a person being an expert in a totally different field could understand. And then when you come to the panel talk, you realize that you don't understand anything. But what you do understand is that the candidates are fully capable of answering in a highly qualified way. Thank you so much.
So, great presentations. So I'll not bore you with your core courses and what you do. What have you planned? You are working on interesting projects which are highly innovative, and that's why you got funded from NTNU Health and Life Sciences. But what would you do after this project? I mean, have you thought of setting up your own companies, become entrepreneurs, and take it to the next level, or live your life in the lab till you die? What is the plan?
Short answer from all of you.
The plan is survive. I have short-term expectation. I would say some of our fields are a lot more marketable than other. Probably Anja, Torgeir have already kind of something developed that could reach the right public, while some of us our clients, the people that would be interested are more in the medical field. But what is great is that around these big projects we have are actually a lot of satellite things, optimization, design, and everything, and that can be very, very relevant for collaborations and setting up something to actually live for.
Never ending indeed.
Nicole?
Eternal funding. I second what Victoire just said, survive mostly. I personally really enjoy academia because of the freedom to actually explore, as opposed to when you work in more privatized companies, you have to follow the rules a little bit more in a different way. You know, in this life, in this climate, who knows where we'll end up? Hopefully employed. That's my...
Anja?
Okay. Yeah, for me, I think it's, you know, I've already kind of proposed the next step, which is right now we've developed something for medical and veterinarian students. And, you know, we have already been asked, you know, what about the public? What about auxiliary hospital workers, so nurses, pharmacists? And so these are prospective steps. But I think not only that, there's an idea, so to speak, to say, yes, a digital escape room as a concept works for this topic, but at the same time, it can be expanded. And I think Marius had also hinted about it, like gamification can be applied to these different other contexts. And I think that is an exciting idea to see where we get funding and how we can take it from just a prototype and an idea to how can we now address the public, how can we address the private sectors, the public sectors, these different environmental farmers, veterinarians, and so on and so forth. So fingers crossed. But if anyone feels free, just
And call
give
you.
give us some dollar bills.
Torgeir, do you have a microphone? Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult to follow up.
Will you
that
run on
one.
the treadmill?
Yeah. My plan is, of course, survive eating oatmeal every day. No, I really like academia. I worked in clinics, training clinics at St. Olav's Hospital for 3 years before I started my PhD. And I just really want to, I'm so interested in the exercise as a medicine prospect. So I just want to continue the work on having that more implemented in our healthcare system and make it more sustainable. Yeah.
And Marius, you have a job that you have got for 5 years.
Yeah. Well, I also plan to survive. Yeah, you were asking about entrepreneurship. Yeah. Yes. I'm not sure if I personally want to sort of venture down that road, but I think it's really important to have that mindset also in terms of turning what you do in research into something practical that can be used in society. So it's a really important aspect. And although I'm not going down the entrepreneurship road myself, then I'm really encouraging others to do it. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good idea. Okay, then time is past 9 o'clock, which is our frame of time for this evening. I will now you already got a good comments here from the people in the audience, and I will say congratulate. You have been in the program of 3 months, learning how to present your research. What is your message? What you want the audience to bring with them when they have leaving the hall after you have done your work. I think you have got a good confirmation tonight that you have reached the audience very well with your communication. So congratulations with this hard work, because it is not easy to come where they have reached tonight. And then I will thank you very much to the audience. Very many good questions. I just feel the energy from you very strongly. And I hope we have some listeners and public in the stream, and that you also could enjoy the evening. We will have the last young researchers group here at this stage, March 24 and March 25. And that will be the last of all these 60 PhDs in the sustainability research at NTNU. So welcome back those dates, and have a nice evening. Thank you.